live. Once again, we got a nice little DIY live stream set up right here because, look, say what you will, so many people are running these Stream Live podcasts, or StreamYard podcasts, and I think I just wanted something that I made for better and for worse. Mostly for worse, right, Nick? But wow, could you be more fired up? I underpredicted. You like, I can't believe it.
I know. Because I was 31-17, and what were you?
You were 31-17 and I was 30-10. And so
Yeah.
I screenshotted at 30-10. I was like, they got there sooner than I thought they would, I
Yeah.
guess. But they tack on another touchdown. Heck yeah. Go Bears.
I mean, if we're being honest, I like tallied up drive by drive of the game for both teams. I mean, the foot was taken off the gas easy in the second half, easily, and I don't mind it. Here's the interesting thing, Robert.
Mhm.
How many offensive yards do you think the Bears had in the first half?
Do you want to hit that on the podcast? This is the live pre-show, or do you want to
Well,
do it
I'm sure
now
we
and
can
again?
cover it there too. I mean, whatever.
Good, cool. What was the question again?
What do you think they had total yards in the first half?
Total yards of the first half, my guess is about 260.
292.
Hot dang.
I mean, remember the 93 passing yards of the first game? That is a thing of the past.
Oh man, dude, what I thought was funniest, and we'll talk about this again. I have no problem with it. How you guys doing? This is the live pre-show, so I see the comments. Everybody talking about how we're on the wrong sides is funny. That's something I flip and post every time. Especially Nick, now that you could probably see it, Nick, if you look up the actual show. But like, this is what I see on Zoom, where your camera is really big now, and mine's still wide.
Ah, yeah,
But
I got it now so I can see the comments. Yeah,
anyways,
I'm
oh,
glad people liked my hat.
oh yeah, good.
Cold
It's a
circle,
good hat.
baby.
You've worn it before.
Yeah, this is the second time. Maybe it's like a good luck thing. I should keep rocking it, you know?
Hey, if it
We'll see.
works, it works. I think my favorite part, Nick, was so the Bears had a clinical enough performance in the first half that I wondered what their offense was going to look like in the second half. And then in the second half, they made a decision that I frankly never expected this guy, or I never expected the Bears, the Chicago Bears, to make, Nick. And that's that right after Kevin Byard's interception, they rolled out and they said, live practice. Why would we bench Caleb? Like, let's just throw the ball. And if you throw a pick, whatever, today's the day to do it. Right now, 3-score lead, just go out there and rep. And the Bears went 30-20 so fast. Just dot, 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 to work their way down the field. I thought it was funny, for what it's worth, Nick. For once, you and I get to talk about a game where I thought the Bears got the bad end of the officiating stick with multiple calls that I frankly didn't think were there, and they were fine. They still just annihilated the opponent across from them. We take those.
I was nervous they were going to, and I made a big deal of this on Twitter. I was nervous they were going to go, whatever you would call it, spearing or whatever, leading with the helmet from Brisker on the fumble, when actually it was the offensive guy that did it. But it was such a big impact, and he was knocked out. I thought they might call that just because sometimes it looks egregious, so they were going to call it, but they didn't. I'm glad they didn't on that one because I was nervous.
I thought, by the way, okay, while we're talking about officiating, did you think that the guy who late hit Caleb deserved a late hit call? Maybe I'm nuts. I didn't think it was egregious. I thought he pulled up.
Well, he was already hands up before he even went out of bounds, and he just went into Caleb. I mean, it wasn't. I thought he was kind of off balance, honestly.
The way I saw it, if he deserved a late hit flag, so did Dexter when he flatlined Andy Dalton on one of those play action shots.
Multiple. Him and Andy Dalton got to be best friends today. They might have had,
Dude,
a good friendship going on here now.
You and I have talked a lot about how there are tons of these Bears seasons where we walk into the season with like way too many big ifs, right? And we say, well, if Tracy Porter just goes back to his old form at 34 years old, and if this guy rekindles that, and if Pernell McPhee, who's never stayed healthy for more than 4 games in a row, somehow maintains an entire season, then the Bears would be good. Dude, Dexter is looking like that dude. Like, Javon Dexter is looking like probably 90th percentile outcome for a number 53 overall, or number 3
Mhm.
53 52 whatever. Like, for that pick, Javon Dexter is looking phenomenal. And I don't know if he's full on the straw that stirs the drink. Like, we're not there yet. But the fact that we're even having that discussion, the fact that I just love the fact that he's producing too. What does he have? 4 sacks already?
Yeah, it depends on what they call those. Some of those halves. I mean, other guys got to the quarterback first. He played much better this week than last week, in my opinion. And I understand the center went out at one point, but both of these guards are good guards, and so him, I think, looking, like a dude is a big step for him. I thought another thing was interesting. We talked about this in last game, but they had the big touchdown run to Chuba, and they had some big chunks, and it was Coward was in at D tackle. I think both times they got some big chunks in. So I know you need to get rest in there for certain plays, but man, they certainly, there's a big drop off. I'm surprised. I'm going to say this. I'm excited to have Zach Pickens back at some point because I think the drop off's not as big when he's in.
They got to do something about defensive tackle, at least defensive tackle depth, if they want to be a legit competitive team. The other thing, Nick, that I do want to point out, so I remember to this day, I remember a Brandon Thorne article where he talked about, if you can believe it, he said on D line, almost 70% of production comes against backup quality players. So
Yep.
it gave me at least an interesting barometer where we constantly say about quarterbacks, about receivers, about D linemen. We say, well, yeah, but can you do it against the best? Nobody does. Like, you got to get your production against whoever you get it from. Because at the
Mhm.
end of the day, they're going to weight all the plays equally, and you're either a 12 sack guy or you aren't. And TJ Watt's going to get to go up against some poor players too. It also reminds me of how, if you can remember, I bet you've been citing this one your whole Wisconsin tenure, that Aaron Rodgers had a really poor record against any team above 500, or
Yep.
at least any team that made the playoffs. I can't remember which stat it was. It turns out it's hard to win hard games.
It is. It is. Yeah. No, I'm definitely with you on that. And I mean, we've had so many bad right tackles that have gotten beat for sacks on Justin Fields over the years, et cetera. One thing I thought was interesting, Robert, and I got a bunch of stats here I wrote down, is the first drive didn't go well, right? I mean, Caleb threw one really bad pass to Keenan, which could have been a pick six, and then he got sacked, which I want to see the all 22, see what he was looking at later. That was the only sack he took the whole game because that was the first drive. It's like, oh man, what are we going to set ourselves up for? They don't have a really good pass rush. And, he got to be in creative mode a lot more awareness. I don't know if you saw, he was like looking around to know where he could move, and ran for some first downs too. So I thought I was really impressed by that, especially starting off bad, that he improved as the game went on.
Oh yeah, it's the kind of thing where we tend to go back and we whitewash these a little, right? We go, Caleb had a great day. It's like Caleb started out looking awful. It's the broadcast copy, but that was as bad a quick out as you're gonna throw to an
Mhm.
open receiver. And then on the sack, it sure felt like he stood in the dead center of the pocket and just ate an L. It happens though. I mean, Trevor Lawrence had some woeful throws today in a 37-34 win over Indianapolis. Like, more to say, Nick, when you're so hyperventilating about your own quarterback, you forget that across the league, Josh Allen will throw an awful interception. I think he started the game 1-9, for instance. And
Dude,
then they
he
made
he
some.
had he had the worst completion percentage, Robert, of any quarterback the last 30 years with 30 attempts or more.
Mhm.
9 of 30.
I mean, bad day. But he's Josh Allen. So Buffalo fans aren't worried about anything.
No.
Maybe they'll be worried a little. Maybe they'll yell at Joe
The
Brady. Maybe they'll
well, the
say
concussion
it's Sean
looked like he got
McDermott's
one.
fault. Like, all kinds of things that they'll find things to worry about that aren't, is our guy good, right?
Mhm.
But we're still in the throes of figuring it out. So unsurprisingly, you see something like that, your heart stops and you go, ah, are all the memes true? And then Caleb goes on to have, I think, one of the most easily the most efficient day he's had in an NFL uniform. But moreover, dude, I thought it was funny. There were a bunch of breaks that he did not catch. If Cole Kmet keeps his dadgum feet, the dude walks into the end zone on
Yep.
the blown coverage up the sideline. Like, Caleb helped hit on a bunch of the screens, but then DeAndre Swift getting run over takes away another first down that becomes a punt off of DeAndre Swift getting called for a hold. Caleb has a really pretty play where he steps up in the pocket. And it's not really the pocket. Like what? He rolls to his left, stops his feet, steps up, gets space, walks into the end zone, called back for totally a penalty. But
Yes.
the play was there. So I would tell you, I thought Caleb was even cleaner than the box says, and the box gave him a 125 passer rating.
Well,
So
well,
could be worse.
also DJ dropped a pass that was a third down,
So open.
like so bad. Also you have the hold where pass interference that was a good anticipation touchdown to Roma Dunze, right?
Hmm.
So you have multiple other ones too. I mean, I'm trying to think of some of the other ones. He threw a decent ball to DJ that he didn't come down with contested on a slant.
DJ
Keenan, that
also
one was a
helped.
little
Was it Rome or was it DJ that also helped contest a throw over the middle? That I'm curious to how PFF will score it because you could call that a turn. That's a very borderline turnover worthy
yeah.
play. But so
I think it was Keenan. There's two defenders.
between the
Him
first
and
play and that play, Caleb
right.
may end up with two turnover worthy plays on the day, but I kind of shrug my shoulders and say, yeah, sometimes you're going to catch breaks, sometimes you're not. He didn't
Hmm.
catch breaks earlier in the season, like the Colts game. Perfect example. PFF charted him with one turnover worthy play. He throws what, three interceptions on that day? Whereas today, no interceptions with a
Yep.
couple mistakes. This to me, Nick, I can even put it in a little nutshell, and then we can start the podcast. If depending on what else you want to say before the show,
Mm.
this was the game I thought we were getting from the 2024 Chicago Bears,
Yep.
where the offense mostly worked around Caleb, and then Caleb at times flashed enough to give the offense a little more than they expected. But for most of the day, he threw to open dudes like JC Horn getting picked on that man beater, the what is it, double posts where DJ's just wide open and works his way into the end zone afterwards. I expected things to be about that easy. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? I
Mhm.
didn't think it would have to be so hard throughout most of September. But hey, better late than never.
I would think before we start the pod, I mean, just because we don't do this often, if anyone has any questions, we could just talk through, spend 5, 10 minutes talking through any questions people have because it's cool to have, people in here talking Bears and excited about a win.
To stall, Nick, while people ask those questions,
Yeah.
let me ask you something completely off topic. Okay. Think through the ownership dynamics, the head coaching dynamics, everything that's not as easy as hot take Twitter stuff, right? You ready?
Okay.
How do you handle the Deshaun Watson thing?
Oh, I would definitely start Jameis Winston. It doesn't even matter at this point. He's a negative. Um, he's a negative EV play right now. Like you have to have plus EV plays if you have them, but he's just unplayable right now.
It
I mean,
sure
well,
feels that way from the
whether
outside.
whether it's confidence, whether he's injured, whether he's just bad anymore, you just can't have him out there. You just can't.
It looks like he doesn't want to be there either, which doesn't help anything. Like, okay, I remember I heard a story this was years ago. I was talking to somebody who was inside a Hallis Hall during the Nagy era, right? And what he talked about was that Nagy and the team earnestly believed during the losing skid that they were 1 week away from turning it around every single week. And then I went and talked to a different friend of mine who coaches defense in the state of Michigan. And he's a great young defensive coordinator because I was kind of laughing about it. He was like, dude, you don't get coaches and you don't get players. These guys are so hopped up on
Yep.
what they've done and the success that they've had that they can't have another mindset. If they
Mm-mm.
didn't think they were going to win, they wouldn't play.
No,
And
they wouldn't have a job either. No.
Watson looks to me like that guy who's lost his edge. He's the driver that won't shoot the gap, right?
Well, okay, here's another one. I mean, without going into all of the scandals and stuff, but Tiger's drop off from golf happened after things got found out, and when those edges are lost, and you're under scrutiny, I think sometimes you don't play the same. So, I mean, I think there's a few things. I mean, after Tyson finally lost one of his matches, to Buster Douglas. He wasn't the same guy either. Still good, just not the same guy. So
Right.
after you lose whatever edge it is, I think sometimes it comes back.
I agree.
Um,
Brady woke up with 6 Super Bowls thinking that he had to prove something to somebody, and that's how he won a seventh. But
oh yeah,
the moment a player gets content, dude, it's over.
hmm
Like
yeah.
they it's just hard to be in a car crash again and push for that
Oh,
extra yard, right? We've got some
so
questions.
one right here. So so let's go in order. We'll go quick here. So Rob, is the 10-win prediction back on?
I think so, or at the very least, it is back on the menu. They didn't beat the Colts, which sucks, but they did beat the Rams and they handled the Panthers. This gap between the Bears and the Panthers was what I had expected before the Colts game. To me, Nick, I was worried that the Bears were going to catch an ups or like a what do you call it, a rowdy Panthers team and potentially drop this game in particular. They didn't. Thank goodness. Not only that, but they gapped them. So you need to clean house on these next 4 games, Nick. I think you need 3 out of the next 4 at a minimum. You have to go into the bye 6-3 or better, if you ask me, which is dangerous. That's a big thing to ask from
It
any
is.
NFL football team. But the gauntlet of the backstretch of the schedule is manageable if you can keep yourself to only needing a 4 out of 4 or 4 out of 8. If you can split the division and beat either the Seahawks or the Niners, you can get to 10 wins actually kind of reasonably.
Yeah,
Another
I think
thing,
easily. Yeah.
by the way, if you want where I'm feeling, Nick, because I think this would be funny, I think there's a chance that the Packers may drop a bunch of white knuckle division games. And by that, I mean the whole division should be close throughout. But if you can bury the Packers, one of these 4 teams has to be last in the division. One of them does,
Mhm.
right? And if the Lions can stay gritty, if the Bears can fake it till they make it, and if the Vikings stay where they are, the Packers may end up the odd one out. Based on the fact that, at least from what I've seen, quarterback play is looking a little kind of dicey
That
with Love
defense
right
isn't good
now.
either. That defense isn't very good. So I'll go to the next one here. So I'm back in. I think ten is still an option for wins. All right. Why did Waldron finally start to call the right plays? So I'll take that one. So in my opinion, that it's easy to call the right plays, and this is from my experience as an OC. When there's no pass rush,
I was
it
gonna
things get
say they played a
much
bad
easier
defense.
when you have time to survey. And how many times did we see Caleb go from 1 to 2 to 3 to maybe wait a second to running? Like there was a lot of time. I think that definitely helped. Obviously, they had some guys out on defense. I think that helped. But I also think I will give Shane some credit here. I think that he is getting to know his guys a little bit. There are some things that I didn't like. I didn't like the um, 1st and 10 um, tight end tunnel screen to Gerald Everett. I didn't like that one. I didn't like the 4th down call fake toss inside run to Roshan with Mercedes Lewis in there, which no one thought the toss was coming. So if you're going to do anything, just have a receiver out there already that you could fake a slant, fake something to. But I do think that using Doug Kramer has been successful. That's a nice get from him. But also, I think if you look, there were times that the Caleb had Keenan and Rome and DJ and all these guys kind of working together. And I think they're all getting confident. Oh, I'm sorry, Komet as well. They're getting confidence together. And I know it's a bad opponent, but you can stack 2.5 games in a row of a good passing game. And I'm excited about that. The run game, that's a different story, but the pass game's coming together.
So it is my opinion, right? That and I've kind of held this opinion for like 3 years. And it's not me trotting it, it's me trying to give a baseline for consistency and bias. Okay, Nick? It is my opinion that in the NFL, we have so legislated player safety, that's a good thing, that you don't get near enough reps at all. And
Oh, no.
especially with the way that teams are handling the preseason, you get a bunch of situations where I believe the moment that the Bears went up 27-7, I legit believe they just started playing R&D, if that makes sense. Like for instance, the 4th down I believe happened at 21-7, but if I was in that call sheet, right? If I was calling stuff, that's where I'm comfortable greenlighting a cheeky play that I want to put on film because I'm not calling it if I don't think it'll work. So I do think it's going to work, right? To pretend like I think it's going to fail, if I thought it was going to fail, I don't call it. It's that simple. You've been there. You don't call something that you're like, ooh, this may not work. In the moment, you think it's going to happen. Most
Yeah.
importantly, you got to figure out what is and isn't going to work against Detroit, against Carolina, and Jacksonville, and Washington, etc., etc., etc. To me, Nick, the most important thing is that even the failures, even Caleb throwing into the end zone to Keenan Allen with J.C. Horn draped all over him, with what sure seems like Cole Kmet sitting down wide open up or in front of him. These
Hmm.
great lessons have some failures. I hope not everything works, because you need to tighten all of this up by December. Everybody, really think about how long that is. The season has to happen again, like all 5 weeks that we've had of the last Bears, or the last couple weeks of Bears football. You're going to have another 5 weeks and then 2 more weeks, and then you get to the gauntlet. That is a long daggum time.
That's something.
And so you need to go through figuring out what isn't working. And so there's part of me that kind of lays off. Maybe I'm hitting him with a Nerf bat, Nick, but I look at it and I'm like, well, enough worked today. And we even had Gerald Everett, like dude on dude a guy for a first down. So
I know.
everything went well.
Well, it was like he has a pulse. So all right, so I'm gonna limit you to like 2 minutes on this one, okay? So this, because you're next up here. So this is the three-parter kind of.
Mhm.
What do you think of the O line? Probably not re-signing Jenkins, and then the O line with Pryor is night and day.
O-line looks solid. Panthers pass rush is so toothless that I think it's a tough test. Like it's kind of like playing not literally a college team, but this is as easy as going to get in the NFL. Jacksonville will be a better test. Re-signing Jenkins, I don't know if you can if he can't stay healthy. I mean,
Yep.
you just can't. The NFL doesn't really allow you to pay somebody less than certain tiers of market value. So right now, Jenkins would be a former second round pick and probably come in at mid-level guard value, because nobody takes low-level guard value. That
No.
happens at the open market on a 1-year deal. So right now, I don't think you can do much with Jenkins other than let him go to the open market. Maybe that changes, but it doesn't help anything that I think he's had one of the worst starts to his career that you're going to see. Third, OL with Pryor, night and day. What a coincidence. Pryor comes in against not the Texans, not the Titans. So I'm not surprised it feels like night and day. Again, football, Nick, is more matchup dependent than any other sport that's played. In football is like the soccer equivalent of a team scoring 8 goals 3 weeks in a row and suddenly scoring none or maybe one for the next 4 weeks. In football, that's kind of normal, especially in college football, but we act like it's not, right? I don't want to say teams aren't consistent. What I do want to say is matchups dictate everything in this game. It's
Mhm.
so matchup heavy. So the fact that the Bears have gone up against pass rushes that weren't Houston's, shocker, that's gone really well. They got to get this thing sorted before they play the Vikings, and the Lions are bringing it this season.
Right. Yeah, they're good. Well, the 2D tackles are good. So here's a question, though, Rob. So bad Panthers defense. No linebacker was a starter. D line didn't have Derek Brown. They lost Clowney early. I know there's a lot of short yardage runs in here. They average 3.3 yards per rush, and that's with Caleb's runs in there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's good. Like, I know it's like, oh wow, things are so much better. Look at Matt Pryor in there. It's like, is it better? I mean, there's no sacks because they can't rush the passer, but the run game's not blossoming. I
This
know
is
last week was good, but the Panthers aren't good either. So to me, there's no consistency. The Colts you couldn't run. You couldn't run against this team. That's a problem, I think.
To me, this is the rare situation where I actually can already think of what I think happened. The Bears were at the goal line a bunch, and they got stuffed at the goal line a bunch. But even the couple of 1 yard totes for Roshan, those are two rushes for 1 yard and a score, right? So it's a successful play, but it's going to bring down your yards per carry. I would imagine, Nick, not that it's going to help you, that the yards per carry was closer to almost 4 on the dot. It's still not 6, it's still not 5, but I thought their run game was good enough. I just thought that they needed to chew ground between the tackles more. This Bears team needs a first down run for 3 yards more than any Bears team I've watched in a while, cuz you just got to show them you can, and make the down not a total waste so that teams don't pin their ears back and come after Caleb. Then you throw the ball and people are open. That's my take. But you're right, it's not a blossoming run game.
No, well, right now I'm going through in the first half. I think I counted 3 runs of more than 5 yards. There was 2 8-yard runs one by Rocha and one by Swift, and then Swift had that 18-yarder. Remember that
Mm-hmm.
toss? Then he cut and said that was nice. But man, this is a bad defense, y'all. Like you saw last week, we had some good runs, and to average, yeah, even if it's 4 yards a carry, I still don't think that's blossoming. But anyways,
No,
I think that's good on questions. If you want to dive in and
let's
get
do it.
into the podcast.
Let's do it. All right. I am recording. Here we go. For those who may be here for a first time, hey, what's up? Bears win. Heck yeah. We're going to record a quick podcast, and you guys are going to be able to listen to it, obviously. But then feel free to ask any questions or make any comments or interact with the chat. We're just not going to be able to respond to anything directly until after the show. Then we'll hang out for a couple minutes and call it, and everybody can get back to their football Sunday. Perfect. Let's get rolling. The Chicago Bears win a game by way more than 2 scores in a 10-36 home drubbing that was everything you could have asked for and more. But who played well? Was it as good as the scoreline suggests? Nick and I will talk through everything on this episode of Bear With Us. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Bear With Us, a Chicago Bears podcast hosted by yours truly, Robert Schmitz, editor-in-chief of the Bears blog, right here alongside with my co-host, Nick Whalen of Football Guys. And boy, howdy, Nick, do we have a fun one to talk through today. Caleb Williams, over 300 yards, 2 scores, 1 sack, the offense, productive, the defense, mauling. This was the game that homers would talk about. Like, we got a comment on our last podcast that said, I believe verbatim, the bias in Homer podcasts is so off-putting. And we were low on the team today. So awesome to see. If you feel it's a week-to-week league, you're never as good or as bad as your last game. The game against the Jags could easily be a dogfight. But today, Nick, there's barely anything to go over other than to just kind of sit back and bathe in the glow, right?
Yeah, you know what's interesting if you think back. I mean, the Bears' first drive was not good. Almost a pick.
Awful, even.
Good thing Keenan got some fingertips on it, and then a bad run, like 3-yard run, and then a sack, and then the Panthers drive right down and get a touchdown, and it's like, okay, like, is this going to be like one of those games? And then the Bears scored 30 straight points. So yeah, it was an awesome game. To me, I think part of it too, in the middle of this game, it felt like the Bears were just running 7-on-7 drill where it's like, hey, we're going to hurry up and we're just going to work on stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like they got enough of everyone involved. It's like, okay, I'm trying to work on rapport with Keenan. I'm trying to get, if people think DJ's not happy, we're trying to get that boosted up, trying to work with Rome. Like, it felt like they were just like working on stuff, but they're just dominating in between.
It's easy to forget, Nick, that the Bears clearly tried a bunch of different stuff in this game. A lot, with the no huddle being a clear focus. The Bears think they can get an edge by trusting Caleb Williams to operate checks at the line well enough to roll into an offense with like 5 or 6 total plays and just walk down the field as fast as he can. We even saw on the drive where the touchdown run got called back that Caleb Williams is exhausted by this, and that moving that fast and playing that quick is a lot. But it reminds me of a game. This may bring up bad memories, but I like to think it's a positive comparison. Can you remember, Nick, the 2019 Week 2 game against the Washington Commanders where Matt Nagy ran the college no-huddle offense where they didn't huddle, they lined up, and Mitch would hard count at the snap, and then he would look at the sideline and they'd wire him in a new play call, and he'd issue a check, and the Bears hung 30 on Washington in one of the most comfortable games Mitch played. This is week 5. So as a rookie, I believe that, you could do a lot more to help your quarterback. But that's really the key for me, Nick. The Bears clearly are trying a bunch of things to help their quarterback, and they sure found something against a bad defense, but who cares about the asterisk? It's a great day.
Well, I mean, just imagine trusting your quarterback that much that he has all of that on his shoulders. And this is no shade. I even tweeted this out. I'm like, it's perfectly fine to cheer for Jaden Daniels and Caleb Williams at the same time. I feel like it's like this like war people are trying to make it. It doesn't have to be. But having everything on his shoulders is honestly the best outcome you could want. I recently watched something on Tom Brady where he talks about how he said, I wanted to have an answer for everything that a defense presented to me. Like I wanted to be in total control the whole time because you wanted to have plus EV at least play calls every time. And that way, if it turns out, at least I have an advantage or a half a man gap better here or the better leverage, passing, etc. And so when Caleb's up there and he's looking, he's like, no, 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 check into this run. No, 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 we're going to check to this pass play. Like continually, the Bears are going to be in better positions to produce on offense.
Another thing, Nick, that I just thought about as we're talking through no huddle, you talk about the advantages and the trust that it shows. It also simplifies coverage looks a little because the defense only has. So, for those who don't know, while the linebacker wears a green dot and the quarterback also wears a green dot, meaning that they both get radio signals from their coordinator, defense has to operate on a system of checks when they're facing no huddle because the offense can snap the ball whenever they darn well want to, and you can't be listening to your DC and call out half a defense when you get a snap against you. That's going to result in a busted coverage. So most of the time you have like 3 to 5 checks, absolute max, but usually it's closer to like 4. And they're based on formation, meaning that if you run a no huddle offense around the midfield mark, as I understand it, Nick, you should pick up on what their checks are. And you say, okay, this is the cover 3 look. Okay, this is the cover 2 look. Okay, this is, and you can start to walk down the field. But second point, Nick, the Bears' offensive line has been getting shredded in designated pass rush scenarios. And what does no huddle do? Keeps them off the field. You can't put a defensive or you can't sub on a designated pass rusher, and whoever the big dogs are on the defensive line, they're going to get worn out by rushing. Defend the run, pivot to pass, bootleg out, bootleg the other way, defend the run again. That's exhausting when you go no huddle, and it's part of life as an offensive lineman. So I wonder if the Bears are attempting to try to find ways to slow down opposing pass rushers and assist their offensive line without compromising the scheme that they're trying to run. If that's what they're aiming for, it sure worked today, and it was fun football to watch.
What? But they did the week before too, right? That's when
Oh,
they
good
had some
point.
success the week before. The other part of it too, and this as a former offensive coordinator and offensive coach in general, I love going no huddle for a couple reasons. And so, it scares some coaches because you're like, oh, my offensive guys are going to get tired. That's true, but the defense is going to get tired as well. But what you can do is you can say, call it freeze. Okay, like, hey, a play just ran. We're going to get up to the huddle. Do some kind of snap count. Nothing. Okay. They could jump, right? So you get that advantage. And then you adjust the play from there. Let your quarterback go from there. Because that way they can't get not only subs in, Robert, but they can't get complicated calls in. They're
Mm-hmm.
not going to get these exotic blitzes where everyone's moving around.
Nope.
You're not going to get that stuff. You're going to get more simplified looks. Just like if you went empty or spread, you're going to be able to identify because they can't do any kind of weird blitz or coverage rotations or blitzes if you're spread out. So to me, it simplifies more for Caleb, but also the more you put on his shoulders early in his career and he's having success with it, the more it's going to blossom year 2, year 3, year 7 down the line. That's why I think people aren't understanding. But like by doing this now, they're winning. They're 3-2. I get it. But you're going to have more success later on because of this. And I think that's going to be kind of the hidden value of this whole thing.
I sure think so. I mean, one of my favorite plays, you talked about just process and how is this going to yield for Caleb Williams, right? One of my favorite plays was one of the throwaways that Caleb got called for a hold on. Because, Nick, if you can remember into I think it was the early fourth quarter. No, it was the late third. Not that it matters, but the Bears, the Bears just saw Caleb Williams run to the end zone, and collapse before finding out that they got bumped back 15 yards. And on that next play, Caleb takes a snap. We don't know what was happening down the field, but we know that Caleb stands in the pocket to the count of 5 or 6. And then he did something that I've seen him do in college, and I had yet to see him do in the NFL, where he looks at his right tackle, he looks at his left tackle, and he checks on the blocks to basically say, my buzzer's gone off, but how are we doing? And
Yep.
assesses the situation. And then, he gets unlucky because the moment he looks away from Braxton, Brax loses and he almost gives up a strip sack. That's
Yeah.
life in the
Well,
NFL.
Robert, do you remember last podcast I talked about this? I said there was a play when Caleb could have went creation mode and didn't when he checked and the guys fell down, but he did this week. Well, I wonder if that's confidence building for him too.
It sure feels that way, and it's him getting away from those first 2 weeks where the pocket was categorically unsafe. And you watch, look, I hate to bring up the obvious comparison here, but for anybody who has watched any Bryce Young film, one thing that's pretty consistent is that Bryce does not like to be in the pocket, and he'll roll out as often as he gets the chance to because he just doesn't want to be there. Caleb, at least from what I'm seeing, Nick, seems to be or basically taking a breath from those first 2 weeks where he got battered in the pocket and is learning a new floor of the pocket is a safe place outside of when a guy loses, but I can trust my teammates and that won't happen every play. And this is a floor to build on. And
Yep.
you end up getting rewarded with a 6 strike up the middle to DJ Moore, a sweet strike on the outside also to DJ Moore. And another one of my favorite plays was Caleb recognizing the bust in coverage. I think it was a bust. I don't think Kmet is supposed to get that free a release up the sidelines, but either way, Caleb hits the honey hole shot against cover 2 or a split field safety look, and if Kmet can keep his feet while turning around, he's going to walk into the end zone. Fun day offensively, fun day from the quarterback.
Well, the other thing too that we saw is, and I know this throws people off some because Caleb's not Jaden Daniels. Okay, he's not looking to sprint. He's not near the athlete, but he's a good runner. And there were multiple times where he got yards, and it's like, how did he get yards on that? Like he shouldn't. He's dead to rights against a safety, and somehow ekes out some yards. And even the touchdown run that didn't count. I was like, what are you? Yeah, okay, touchdown. It's like no, yes, like one of those type
First
of
time
things.
run before it was sweet to that point.
Right. And well, I mean, the first play I remember watching him play the Texas Oklahoma game was the 4th-and-1 when he runs and houses it. He's got this ability, but he doesn't tap into it. But he's tapped into it more recently to convert, right, and get first down. So, I think there's a lot of great things that happened in this game that were just hidden within, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's a feel that every quarterback has to develop, and Caleb had found it in college, but in the NFL, it's different, right? I mean, it's the difference between what do you know is normal and what don't you know? And when you're a rookie, that means you're constantly checking. Nick, you have to reconfirm all of that information.
Yeah.
Is the safety as far as I think he is? Is the edge rusher on me yet? Are we good on pass protection? Is the running back where I thought he would be? But you play enough football, and I mean, Nick, there's a theme developing. Sam Darnold, dominating. Geno Smith, dominating. Captain Kirk, still firing. Like veteran quarterbacks are winning in the current league. And it's partially because, Nick, I believe anyways, there's going to be a point where Caleb can make the downfield read, but then he can get to the check down faster because he basically doesn't have to look at it. He knows where the check down is instead of having to read the check down and then throw him the ball. If you follow.
What that keeps a high floor though for every play, Robert. Instead of it being 2nd and 10, oh no, things weren't there. I dump it down. Now it's 2nd and 6. That's the word. Again, there's going to be incompletions. I'm not saying there never will be, but it feels like there's a lot more comfort right now within him playing. At least I do. When I watch, I'm more comfortable because I'm like, yep, he knows where this is. He's going to operate the offense and keep us ahead of the chains.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, it definitely does not help anything that Caleb Williams, look, I haven't watched, I guess, enough of the young quarterbacks to really know what Jaden Daniels is and isn't doing. I've read a lot of things, but I just haven't had the time to go through it myself. Nick, some of Caleb's incompletions are sprays. I mean, he still has a couple of these where he just fires the ball and misses, in pretty rough looking fashion. But I mean, that didn't happen at USC. Not like this. So I can't help but think that it's a matter of comfort, and we saw enough strikes today, and we've continued throughout every game he's played to see enough well placed and accurate footballs to at least come to the conclusion that while everybody does spray a couple passes here and there, it does happen to every quarterback. With Caleb, we're still walking down a long road. But the best part is we don't have to reach the end of that road probably until next year, which is still asking a lot of any rookie. But realistically, if we wanted to even hope for something, Nick, you gotta hope Caleb has made it there, or at least made significant progress come the Week 11 Packers game. But it
Mhm.
is a long time
Yep.
between now and the Week 11 Packers game.
Mhm.
So plenty of time to take baby steps.
Yeah, yeah, no, I agree with you there. So I talked about this a little bit when we were live. I want to go over just a few. I have a few things from the game. I have a few things from the touchdowns to talk about. Then I have a few things from total yards. So I'll start with total yards because that'd be big picture,
Mhm.
right? So our offense in the first half had 292 total yards and 116 in the second half, which I think was clearly took the foot off the gas some, but I do like that they still were passing some to keep that going. Um, Carolina went 134 in the first half and then 97 in the second half. Sorry, with both of these, y'all, I'm not counting the Bears -4 yards with kneel downs on the last drive because I don't think it really matters. And I'm not counting the 64 yards the Panthers had on their last drive when the Bears had their JVs in, I will call it, and Bryce Young came in. So you can add that into it. But I'm saying like when it was like still a game when we were playing, that was the differential. Still muted.
I mean, that's as good as you can ask for, Nick. It's awesome. I mean, it's a great day, right? It's always funny to me when you have a football game like this because I feel like you see these a lot more in college, but everybody knows that. The funny part is, this is the team the fans expected to get top to bottom, right? Even
Mhm.
with kind of a not even middling, even with a running game that still didn't really get off the ground, Nick. This was a day, for instance, where I don't think Caleb, quote unquote, earned his 300 yards, or at least his 300 yards came with a lot of help from a very healthy screen game. Whether it was little 6 yard balls to Roma Dunze or 30-yard massive hits from Cole Kmet and DeAndre Swift, I don't really care, right? That's the funny magic of the NFL is not every yard has to be so hard earned,
Nope.
especially when the offense is operating fairly healthily. One thing that I loved, by the way, is continuing to see that when Caleb gets his chances to pass, I don't know if he's passing up deeper looks downfield. And I really mean that. I don't know. But you
Right.
get plays like the DPI to Roma Dunze, where Caleb is seeing a tight window in the end zone and he's ripping it over the middle of the field anyways, and the ball travels to a safe location that I think Rome could have gotten there. I look at plays like that and the DJ ball where he pushes his eyes towards Keenan Allen, the safety works really hard to cover there, opens up the middle of the field, and he lofts a strike down the middle to DJ Moore. And I say to myself, Nick, I'm not expecting the rookie to be reading the field perfectly. Patrick Mahomes says it took him till the end of his second season, just to use one of the
Mhm.
only examples we have of a quarterback actually answering that question, right?
Mhm.
But his eyes are in the right place so often that I
They are.
can't help but be excited about the process. It's not just empty results.
Yeah. Well, I mean, take the touchdown to DJ Moore, which by the way, I'm glad that DJ listens to the
Which touchdown
podcast.
to DJ Moore?
Well, the second one, but I'm glad DJ listens to the podcast and
Thank you,
he's
DJ.
mad because we called Roma Dunze the best receiver on the Bears last week or last pod, and clearly we motivated DJ Moore. I'm kidding, y'all, but but that was a designed screen and go to Keenan Allen on the right. So he goes there, sees the safety. He's like, oh, well, this is wide open, and boom. Like, I understand that you can move the safety with your eyes, but I think the design actually was right. And knowing what was going to happen left, like, that's what we talked about, y'all. During the season, there's no time to really work on techniques and whatever. There's so much you have to know in terms of plays and defenses that they like and processing stuff that it's not like, okay, I need to work on my footwork and my release and all this kind of stuff. It's about, oh, hey, that guy's there. That means they cannot have a safety to the left.
Mm-hmm. And you need to be able to hit that window. Not just because, as far as the NFL goes, it's yawning open, and 7 points is a chance that you can I mean, you just can't afford to pass on it in the NFL. Even if the Bears won by 26, you got to hit those shots because you won't always get them. Moreover, Nick, it's always important you got to hit them on time. Look at the way the
Mhm.
ball flutters. If DJ gets that ball a quarter second later, there's no way he stays in the end zone. Like,
No.
it is always wild to me how tight the windows can be in football, where people will look and they'll say, why don't you throw that? Somebody's open 30 yards downfield. And it's like, yeah, they're open 30 yards downfield. If you threw this, even a quarterback with a 65-yard range, the receiver could run 80 yards. That's going to flatten out. The defense has way more room
Yep.
back there than you think they do. And so it's always wild when you see that. It's part of what, to me, made a drive like that drive we saw when Caleb got the ball and was allowed to just throw for like 60 yards and work them down to the red zone, that I think is so positive. We saw that 13-yard seam ball to Rome Odunze where it was like, ooh, that is a nice,
Mhm.
nice throw. And Caleb's attacking all levels of the field. I don't know. You and I could talk about Caleb Williams forever. There's a lot of players that I think deserve a lot more credit. I appreciated Waldron coming away from the first drive, by the way, and saying, we have to run the ball up the middle. We're not going to do any of this side to side stuff. We got to just go grind at a couple first downs up the gut. That's what the Bears did. I do think that unlocked a lot of the rest of the offense. And I hope that the Bears are able to continue to do that. You don't even have to
Well,
run it super efficiently, just enough. Just enough.
yeah. That leads me to my next thing here. So I wrote down our touchdowns. Okay. So I called the first one deep cross. Okay. So it's think of like mesh. Mesh is normally at 5 to
Hmm.
6. But it was a deep cross and they had a miscommunication, which that's fine because the Bears have miscommunications, but they don't go for touchdowns most of the time. So that was one. The we just talked about the other one to DJ. But then the other three were all Doug Kramer in the game touchdowns. Okay. And we like this, right? We saw this last week. This is successful this week. I joked because I was like, hey, all three plays have been conversions. It was a third down last week in goal or in short conversion with Roshan and a touchdown. And the first one here was the touchdown. But then the second, or I'm sorry, the fourth time they had Kramer in, Swift got down at the 1 inch line. Was he in if they challenged it? I'm not really sure, but either way, and then they got in the next one. So I joked that I jinxed it. But tell me this, Robert, okay? That's going very well. 3rd and 1, middle of the field. 4th and 1, middle of the field. They don't bring in Doug Kramer. Even if you wanted to play action it, which they did do a play action off of it later, that's more effective than faking a toss and giving it to Roshan when no one thinks that you're actually going to run the toss on 4th and 1.
Well, I would have hoped this is me trying to think like a coach, right? I don't want Kramer to become such a blatant need that teams start just scheming out an extra defensive lineman and they just bring him in when we substitute. I want to be able to go no huddle and pick up a 3rd and 1. I can't huddle every time just to
Mhm.
bring Kramer onto the field. So running at Pryor and Darnell Wright, I feel pretty good about that. Like, yes, there's a misdirection element, but really that's just a power run behind the right side of your offensive line, and they didn't get it. We don't have the all 22, so I don't know specifically who got blown up.
Well, twice.
Right? Exactly. Twice. And this
I mean,
is
third
with
and one, 4th and 1. I mean, you should get a yard between two plays.
the
Come on.
Bears have been terrible in situational rundowns. Like, Doug Kramer is helping them find a solution, but I don't have the numbers in front of me. They feel like they are almost hopeless in 3rd and 1, gotta have it situations where they need their quarterback to kind of bail them out or for a run play to just go unusually well. I don't love that, if I'm being honest. But that's part of where I see the Kramer stuff that they're doing, and I say Shane's clearly trying to figure something out. And they
Mm.
got enough of them. They pounded 3 touchdowns in. And by the
Yep.
way, I don't know if you saw this. Did you see DeAndre Swift get pissed that Roshan vultured his score?
Yes,
I
he
thought
should
that was
though. He
hilarious.
should. I mean, it's honesty.
He
I'm
was like, "We're gonna hustle up, right? We're gonna hurry up."
yep,
What?
and,
You want me
yep,
off the
yep,
field? And
yeah.
it
Well, because
looked
he got
like
all the way down there on the screen, so I give it to him. One thing that I did like, and I was expecting out of this Kramer package, and maybe this is going to be the next week or whatever, is that they have they did the outside zone boot this week.
right.
finally, right? And that was the one where Caleb had to stop and mess with the safety, then ran for some yards as well. But like they did that in the preseason, there was a lot of positive plays off of it. So you saw it. I'm almost wondering if Kramer, because he comes across and I don't know if I'm you guys will get this reference, but the 49ers did this with Trent Williams a couple of years ago in the playoffs where he was like the move guy and Detroit did with Penei Sewell.
Mm-hmm.
And he comes out and then Penei went out for a pass. Not that. I don't need Doug Kramer catching passes in the flat. I know some people want
It's
that.
coming.
Okay.
It's
But
coming.
I don't think we need that.
It's coming.
Oh
You know
my
it's coming.
gosh.
No,
Jordan Love just got pick sixed.
hey, I've seen this before. I literally won't count it for nothing until that game ends and it's final. I feel like I've lived this too many
I'm
times.
just saying you saw the play, right? Pick six, Jordan Love. Anyways,
Yes.
um, is I want Doug Kramer to come across and then they do like a boot off of it and he seals the guys because initially he's kicking out, right? But he can work his way so he can log block it. And because it'll be probably a guy smaller than him and in weight. And then Caleb can come around the outside. You can have tight end go corner and have a crosser, like some kind of something off of it, like a play action pass. Is kind of what I'm thinking. Now, if you want to do that, maybe on third down, 3rd and 1 with Kramer in, and then 4th down, you try to muscle it in. But like, I know it's going to evolve from there. But they didn't activate Kari Blasingame, Robert. So if you're not activating him, then Doug Kramer is your fullback.
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't want to be this guy, okay? Look, okay, in the NFL, you either are or you aren't. I love feeling good about players, but to use an example, Mercedes Lewis, last year, we had it. This year, we are a coach because when we're on the field, we are not that helpful. And with Kari Blasingame, Kari 2 years ago, and frankly, just in the Getsy offense, he had it going on. This year with Shane Waldron, I don't think he gets it anymore.
Nope.
And hey, let's just give a player some due, dude. As much as people want to meme on it, Doug Kramer moves exceptionally well for a 280-pound person.
He does.
That does not have too much value outside of niche situations. But
Well, look at Baltimore though. Baltimore has just that guy, right? In their blocker, and he's an old lineman converted D lineman, and that's just like what his role is. But it's valuable. And let's also not forget. I can't remember if it was the first or second game, Robert. Maybe you can help me out. Is Blasting game they had like
it was the first game.
outside zone
I know exactly what you're
boot
talking about.
where he didn't get to the safety or
Keenan's
whomever, and they
wide open. Keenan is
Yep.
wide open, howling open. And Kari doesn't get the block. Caleb doesn't get the pass off. 93 yards passing.
Yeah.
Endures
Yeah.
in media. Say what you will, guys. These players have phones. They're lying if they say they don't read the press clips. So Kari blows a block, and the quarterback endures a media beatdown for the next, frankly, 4 weeks, in part because he started on the wrong foot. That, Nick, you and I both know if Caleb had gone 135, 1 score, 1 pick, everybody would have just moved on, right?
Mhm.
And that doesn't matter. That doesn't actually matter that much. It's more to say that Doug Kramer, being a foundational blocker and basically a sixth man that can also move, like a sixth lineman that can also move a little bit, clearly has value to a Bears team that doesn't have enough beef on the front line anyways.
Can I add to this? And I agree with you on that 4th down call. From what I just again quickly saw, and from other things, and from what I said last week, I would rather see him in there than Mercedes Lewis. Mercedes is taking a step back, and I don't think he's a positive for the offense right now. Just like I don't think Gerald Everett is, despite all the snaps that he gets. I would rather see Kramer in, even if he's in that tight end role as your 6-0 lineman, than Lewis right now.
And hey, look, this is a league of results. To build off what you're talking about, Nick, if the Kramer thing hadn't worked, I'd be laughing at him. I'd be calling him Shane Nagy, to be honest with you. Like, let's just be so real between the two of us, right?
Who is the lineman that caught the touchdown?
With Nagy, wasn't it?
Bradley.
So first of all, he
Sewell?
tried to make the Bradley Sewell thing happen for an awfully long time.
That's who it was.
But
Bradley.
so like, there's a lot of the same ideas between Shane Waldron and Matt Nagy. It is pretty funny when you compare the two. But dude, kudos to the culture that the Bears have built. Because the fact that Doug Kramer has been hanging around as a backup center has pretty clearly proven in year 3 that he can't handle NFL defensive tackles. I wish he could too. right?
Right.
But he just doesn't have the size to handle the Vita Veas of the world. It's not going to happen.
Mhm.
But he found a role anyways. And I think it's a mark of culture when teams have players that perform better than they ever have in unexpected ways. DeAndre Carter rising to the challenge,
Mhm.
Doug Kramer rising to the challenge, Matt Pryor rising to the challenge. These are not all budding superstars in the league, but if you want to be a playoff contender, frankly, just a playoff team, you need performance from guys in the like bottom 10 guys on the roster. And
Mhm.
this is something, Nick, that when
That is
I
true.
look at it, I think it's creative. Now they just got to get Velas to figure it out.
Yeah, no, that's actually a really good point. All right, so I have a couple other things. And again, we haven't talked defense or anything yet, but this is also still big picture, okay? 8 home wins in a row and 10 games holding consecutive games holding opponents to 21 points or less. Say what you want about Flus, say what you want about Waldron, changing team, whatever. Those two things are super impressive.
There's one hole on this defense, dude. There's one hole, and it is when they take Andrew Billings or Javon Dexter off the field. The guys that come in are not at the level that they need to be.
No.
Even Tyreek Stevenson, to use an example, this day was, in my opinion, Nick, the perfect Tyreek Stevenson type day that I've been trying to sell you on. Because while he gave up 5 or 6 catches that I would love for him to be more competitive on, he also strapped up 5 or 6 other routes and was just an inefficient guy to target. You know what I
Mhm,
mean?
mhm.
Like, I would have thought that, remind me his name, former Steeler. I can't believe I don't remember it, but they didn't call his name enough for me to remember.
Oh, Porter.
No, Johnson, right? DeAndre Johnson? Uh,
The receiver?
the receiver today.
Deontay Johnson.
Deontay, thank you. I would have thought Deontay Johnson would have killed Tyreek Stevenson. Like his movement profile and the way that Stevenson struggles to get in and out of that zone break, I would have thought he did a way better day. But he didn't. He got strapped up on a key series. And yeah, you get a DPI later in the game, you get a first down later in the game, but that kind of play where it's like, can you run a decent route against TJ Edwards? Most of the time, but not all the time. And that inability to guarantee it just means that then when you get a sick play down the field, like Nick, how many times do you actually see the safety hold his ground, keep his eye on the football, and then snag a ball that comes over his
I
head?
mean, to be fair, I had high expectations for Kevin Byard because of his career, right? What he's done for his entire career. And I know some people were like, "Oh, he was so bad with the Eagles last year," and people said whatever. He's been impressive. I can't. It's tough to find a play where I was like, "Man, Kevin Byard is not good," right? Or he's been disappointing in Chicago, and that's through 5 games. And he's an older guy, but he's a plus asset. But you said like that play, very impressive.
Brisker has been awesome. I'll give that man flowers every week because I gave him a lot of hell last year
Mhm.
and he hit the lights out of Tommy Tremble today. I mean, that was a fumble that I don't know how many guys are holding on to the football. And I really mean that. Like
Look,
that.
it's Tommy Tremble's fault.
What do you mean?
He lowered his head. He lowered his head, which the rule, y'all, eyes up, because you don't want any spinal injuries. He lowered his head. Tommy Tremble should have been flagged, and then Brisker laid with the shoulder, and Tremble put his helmet into his helmet.
He
But
hit him
yeah,
so unbelievably hard.
huge,
Like
huge.
we talk a lot about the hits where a guy gets like tabletopped. You know what I mean, Nick? Where
Yep.
somebody
Oh
has
yeah.
no momentum and a guy with a lot of momentum just hits the piss out of him. That was a car crash. When we talk about that, that was a meeting of force. And Brisker just thundered the ball out. Impressive
The
turnover.
the most impressive play on defense today was from our boy Andrew Billings,
Oh man.
who who when he was sacking Dalton, I said this was the most impressive part of it because I don't think people saw it. When he's sacking him, he swipes with the left hand, doesn't get him, but he's holding with the right, then switches, holds with the left, swipes with the right. The ball moves, Dalton almost loses it, and then sacks him. I was like, hits, 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 hits. He's doing the hits principle, y'all. He's trying to create a turnover while sacking the guy, which is just insane level for a nose tackle.
Okay, so I'm about to ask you a question that is ultimate Homer tier question territory. So just
Oh, that guy's going to comment again on this. Dang it.
buckle
All
up.
right.
Buckle up. Okay. Andrew Billings is in the first year of a relatively cheap 2-year extension. Do you think his agent comes to the Bears and asks for another extension after this season and Andrew is already thinking about it? Because the kind of ball he's playing, he's looking at 8-figure money. Like this is very, 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 very good interior defensive line play.
I don't know that you can. I don't know that. I mean, I know there's 1 year left on the deal after this
And
year.
he getting paid like $2 million a year. There's no way. Like
It's something
there's
low. I'll look it up here. It's low. I'm gonna say no. I'm gonna say they're not gonna like hold out if he doesn't get another one.
not hold out. Just go back to the Bears and look for, let's say, another 2-year extension at 7.5 million AAV. Like the kind of money that Andrew Billings has just never made. Because at
All right.
least what he's doing right now, he's playing phenomenal football.
All right. You ready for the deal?
Is it, I'm thinking it's 2-8, right?
It's 2-8. Yep. So he's making. I mean, there's a signing bonus and it's 3.5 against the cap. That's
It's a
insane.
steal. It's a steal of a
Insane.
deal. Like,
Yep.
I think it's literally cheaper than Javon Dexter's deal, which is hilarious. No, it's not. It's not quite that cheap. Which, speaking of, I know we talked about him on the pre-show. Have we talked about Dexter?
No, I don't, not on the show. Nope, we haven't.
Dexter is looking like the 90th percentile outcome of what we could have hoped that Dexter would look like. And I really mean that. I feel like Dexter, it's not even him as a run defender. As a run defender, let's be real. He's just okay, right? He's
Yeah.
just fine. As a pass rusher, he's coming up with some of here's my favorite part, Nick. There are a lot of guys, okay? There are around the league that will maintain a positive pass rush win rate. And they'll win a lot of pass rushes, but they won't actually affect the quarterback. I think one of my favorite things I've seen from Dexter is that when he wins his pass rush rep, he wins it quickly and he's targeting the quarterback consistently.
Yeah.
Like, when Dexter won a pass rush rep because he's on the quarterback very, very quickly. He's making an impact. Sometimes it's as simple as Andy Dalton throws a play action pass to a wide open receiver down the field. I don't know if you caught this, Nick, because it's just the kind of thing that happens in football. He throws a 35-yard wide open pop PA pass. Dexter hits the piss out of him, and Dalton's not himself for the rest of the series. And the Bears end up forcing a field goal. Like, sometimes that's football. Sometimes that's football where you take a massive shot on a quarterback because you're fast enough to get there. And Dexter has just punished Stafford. He punished Dalton. The week before that, he punished Anthony Richardson. Dude's making a habit out of this. This is a massive result for these Bears.
Yeah, and that's true. And I had someone actually said that I was a hater of Dexter, which I thought was surprising after the last episode. I just think I don't think he played better this week than last week. And in the run game, he has some work to do. One of the things too, I think that helps him a lot. Well, I'm sorry, which makes him more impressive in the pass rush is he's so tall, y'all, that like when he does get on a quarterback, they can't see around him because he's such a massive human. It is interesting because when he swims, like most of our linemen are shorter than him. He's just like, what is this small guy doing? And get out of my way. Like he's just an impressive athlete. And I think that he's still learning. He's still improving. Like it could get even better than this. So I think you said this on the pre-show, but like for where the Bears got him in the second round, it's obviously a plus EV move right now, but like it could be a massive home run. But right now it's just a very good pick. And that's great.
It's huge. It's what you literally needed to make this work. And another thing, Nick, we talked about culture earlier. There's one more player that I want to use as a signet of the Bears' current culture. You want to guess who that is? Here's a hint, okay? And this may give it away. We make fun, you, me, most of football Twitter. We make fun of how common it is for coaches around the league to watch a guy's tape and say, they're using him wrong. And then the Bears trade for Chase Claypool, and shocker, he's bad, right?
Right, yeah.
But there's one player on this Bears defense where the Bears apparently saw something way, way different than his former team did. Do you know who I'm talking about?
No, I don't have that one.
Darrell Taylor looks like the real deal.
Yeah, he
Like
does.
he looks like the real deal when
Yep.
he's rushing the passer. That guy is on dudes. And it is wild to see what the Bears got in him. This is what I wanted Yannick Ngakoue to be last
Yep.
year. Just keep popping up in the picture as the Bears offense stacks up a lead. And he did. He made Andy Dalton's life hell. And I thought for sure he had a strip sack in him on one of the plays where Andy managed to get rid of the football. But this is exactly what you and I predicted, as this defense, probably the best play of the day. And I think the play that shows what this Bears defense right now, Nick, is doing to the minds of the teams across from him. Was there any better play than, was it Mingo? It wasn't Leggett, right? On that slant where he picks his head up and he sees Tremaine Edmonds staring right
Javante
at him.
Sanders,
It
the
was,
tight end.
yeah. He just ball hits the ground. He's like, I ain't got that in me right now.
Nope.
And
Nope.
it has seemed since week 1. I'm sure you've seen it too. Like the Bears are just more physical than the offense across from them.
Yep.
They'll have occasional gashes. They clearly are giving up too much in the run game, because I can think of multiple explosive runs from Pollard. I can think of multiple explosive runs from Taylor. I can think of some solid explosive running from the Rams. And then you obviously have Chuba Hubbard pop loose today. So good running games might be something that could undo this Bears defense on occasional plays. But most of these plays, they are taking their pound of flesh. They are taking their pound of flesh.
You know what I thought was interesting is, so the most of the explosive runs for Tennessee were left. Taylor was left and then went right. And then this one was left, the big one to Chuba. They switched. I don't know if you noticed this in the second half. They switched. They put Sweat when they switched tackles, when Taylor, is it Moton, went out. They put Taylor over there and they put Sweat as the other D end, which I thought was interesting, because if you put Sweat over there, it changes, because if you flip flop, because they'll make their calls and where they want to run probably opposite him, because none of the big runs have been to his side. I don't know if that was a coaching move or not, but if it was, I liked it.
I love it. It really feels like this Bears defense, kudos to him, are adjusting. And I think that's a positive thing when you look forward. Hey, look, everybody, let's just back up and talk about a 3-2 Chicago team for a hot minute. It's the first time they've been above 500 in a long time. Okay? So first of all, drink in the moment. We may not get another one. All right? But moreover, Nick, the offense has gotten legitimately better. The defense is opening games at one speed and finishing at twice that speed in nearly every game. They didn't have that against the Colts, but they did it again against the Rams, and they did it again today. There are trends we're seeing with this football team. And hey, Nick, who knows? Maybe they are able to bury bottom half competition and they struggle against top half competition, like all the Flus haters say. That remains to be seen, right? But we're starting to see trends that may show that this thing has some life. And if you combine that with Caleb Williams starting to show off a little more creation in every single week, if you get to a week 12 team that the offense is firing, Caleb Williams is a wild card that defenses cannot solve, and this Bears defense is still setting a ceiling on how well any team's going to actually do against them, they could be a real problem team to play. They just have a long way to go before they get there. You know what I mean?
Yep. Well, I mean, if you keep offenses to 21 points or less, you're going to be in every ball game. And now that you have an offense that's passing at least and it's clicking, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see, again, what's it like against Detroit? What's it like against Green Bay? You know, eventually they're going to allow more than 21, but this just shows it's not luck, right? It's not just they played a bunch of bad quarterbacks. They held Houston till 21 or less. Like, it's, you can go through the list. When they lost games, they held Jordan Love and the Packers in week 18 without Jalen Johnson to 21 points or less. Like, you can go through the list. I want to go something a little off this track, Robert.
Go for it.
There was a fashion sorry, not fashion, a different um, gear choice today. Caleb Williams had a glove on his left hand.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know if it was, a shout out to Michael Jackson or if it was a grip thing.
Did
Um,
Peyton used to do that? I'm honestly asking because I could have sworn he did.
I think a lot of quarterbacks have done that. I think Brady's done that in times too. It gives you more grip.
Mm-hmm.
But I just thought it was interesting because normally it's cold weather. You start seeing that change, and this is
Right.
not cold weather. I just didn't know if you noticed that or what your thoughts were.
So when it comes to gear, can I be honest with you, Nick? I look at it and I say to myself, with gear and quarterback mechanics, like if don't make me worry about it. Like I don't want to think about it. I would rather look at the formations and look at everything else that's going on. Let me use an example, okay? Caleb Williams' footwork at USC, conventionally speaking, was always a mess.
Yep.
We just never saw him throw the ball particularly inaccurately. So you could kind of just shrug your shoulders and say, look, conventionally it's a mess, but I have 1,000 pass attempts and a very good completion percentage to show for it. So whatever, right? And then when you start to see inaccuracy, you go, God, do I have to worry about this now? And days like today are great because for the most part, no, you don't. I do think that when it comes to Caleb's deep ball, funny little comparison, by the way, Nick, I don't know if it's the most precise. I would love to see a little more precision. To use an example, I made I made a comment about how I'd love to see Cole Kmet keep his feet, and I do think it would be great if he did. Also, don't make your guy turn around when he's home free like that. Put
Yep.
the ball in front of
Yeah,
him so that he
that's
can
true.
just catch it out in front and then trot on into the end zone. He's not going to fall that way. So, little of everything. All this to
Mhm.
say, the main thing that I like is that we're seeing Caleb throw the ball in a way that it's cutting through the wind. We're seeing Caleb prep himself. He's already wearing sleeves. I love that he's wearing sleeves because you're going to be playing in December eventually. Better to
Mhm.
get used to your body being hot ASAP because eventually it's going to snow. And when it snows, you
Yep.
better be ready because you've spent your whole life in California.
Yep.
So I
Well,
just,
no.
sorry, you've spent the last couple years in
Thank you.
California.
Yeah, you have to be accurate.
Before
Pe-
then,
peop-
you were
the
in
people in the comments will get after us on that
okay.
stuff, Robert.
Before
We
then, you
got to
were in
be,
Oklahoma, where
and then he was in DC.
Oklahoma's climate is similar enough to Texas, where I'm like, I know what that is, and we get like 2 weeks of 20 degrees. That's it.
DC's not super warm all the
Did you know
time
it's
either.
still 97? Like it's October and it's still 97 degrees out there. But
Robert, it's not like that in Wisconsin. All right, let's shift from Caleb. A couple other small things, and then I'm sure we're going to get out of here. Roshan, Swift, they obviously have two different types of styles. I'm still not sure exactly which one is best for anything. I think Swift is a good slasher at times. Yeah, I would say has a little bit more juice than Roshan does. Roshan has a little bit more power at times. Although when he was at Texas, I saw some really good cuts from Roshan, which I haven't seen as much in the NFL. So I don't know if he's just like, I'm going to burrow through. Did you see? And I'm going to give a shout out to, is it Boog on Twitter? BOOGCB. That's
I
his
have no
handle.
idea.
Oh, you know his handle? We follow each other. Anyways, he has a screenshot when Swift went airborne. There were two easy gaps he could have just walked in.
What's new?
I know. So that's one thing. I just don't know if that you had any issues with running backs at all, or who you think could be
So
better, etc.
my thing with Swift, this is what I saw from his Eagles tape, right? Okay, everybody, let's collectively try to work through the problem. How did the NFL's first blind running back get a 3-year, $8 million a year deal? I'm joking, by the way, and I don't mean anything towards disabled people. But, anyways, the point is, Nick, is that DeAndre Swift can make a lot out of situations where he gets to the second level. Screen passes basically skip the first level, which is part of why he's so good at them, is because once you get past the cloud that is the line and you can see the picture clearly, I actually think Swift has quite good vision in a way that I think a lot of running backs don't. Dude,
Mhm.
let me use an example. When David Montgomery was in Chicago, he was so good at getting the second and third level, and then he would just run into the only defender that was in the picture. You'd be looking at one defender. You'd say, put a move on him. But he'd
Yep.
just lower his shoulder and take 17 yards where maybe he could have scored. And so I don't know why running backs do that. I just know I've seen so many Chicago running backs do that, and I'm not worried about Swift doing it. The problem is he needs a clear lane. Like, I'm actually almost surprised the Bears don't do more gap, because then you could point Swift at the B gap and say, run there. But maybe they just don't think that they can get guards across the center, because Coleman Shelton is getting battered so badly that when they try to run power, he tends to trip the puller. You think that's fake, but that's what happened in the Texans game. And
No, I
so
know. I know how bad Coleman Shelton is. This is yeah.
it's tough.
So so another thing that's interesting, we have to touch on at least before we head out here, is Tevin Jenkins goes down,
Mm-hmm.
leaves the game with another injury. Bill Murray comes into left guard. It's not Nate Davis, because last week they shifted. They put Pryor at left guard. They brought Nate Davis at right guard, and I'm like, okay, I don't know if they don't want to, shift Pryor again or whatnot. I thought that was an interesting move, but again, I will say this: once Tevin left, the offense didn't function as cleanly.
They didn't function as cleanly, but I didn't know if it was the left guard that was beating them. I don't know. I'd have to go back and watch the tape.
I don't know either. I'm just saying it. I mean, that's all we have
I
right now.
also feel like the tension in the game wasn't there. Like, especially once the Bears got to that mid-third quarter, it was like, oh, so the Panthers don't have a rally in them. Cool. Game's over then. And everybody just shifted mentally.
Part of the problem, Robert, is I think that Matt Pryor is a gap scheme guard.
Mm-hmm.
I think that Coleman Shelton is a backup center in the NFL. Darnell is, I think, solid at both pass and run.
Yes.
And Braxton depends. If they have a guy with heavy hands, scouting term, I know you like that one, Robert. He struggles against pass rush. If not, he's probably an asset in both the pass and run game, and he's really athletic. Braxton would be better in zone scheme.
Yep.
I think Tevin would be good in zone scheme. Nate Davis better in zone scheme. Ryan Bates would be good probably in both, but probably more in zone scheme. Like their mind was zone, and then now that the guy's hurt, it's like, I guess we're gonna do gap. But I think Swift's better with zone, and Roshan's better with gap. So, like, to me, I think it's a mismatch of guys. If people are wondering, gap, think downhill, north south run game, power, ISO, counter, like trap, that stuff. And then zone, you're thinking outside zone, wide zone, split zone. Inside zone's about the most downhill you're going to get in the zone game.
I agree. Also worth mentioning, I think that the Tevin Jenkins that we think of and wanted to extend could handle gap scheme. We have not seen that Tevin Jenkins this year. Darn
Correct.
shame.
Correct.
One other thing I do want to speculate on, okay? And Nick, I'm saying this because if I didn't, we would get comments about it. All right? So, one thing I want to know is why Bill Murray, okay? It would not be that hard to put Nate Davis in the game. And it suggests to me that there is a possibility. Can I caveat this harder, Nick? Because I know you like him. I know he's got talent. I wonder if the Bears just don't think Nate wants it enough. Because it's not an ability question. Nate did not just suddenly become awful at football. At least if he was, let's say, giving his best effort. I don't know how to say this because I don't want to speculate about a professional athlete's drive. But I also know, Nick, that offensive line is a living, breathing unit. And if there's a guy out there that they think is going to give 125% and therefore outperform somebody that they don't think is quite giving 100, then that's a call the coaching staff may make. Murray being in the game is weird. Am I allowed to say that? That's weird.
Why I brought it up. I thought it was weird. Yeah. Well, especially because it wasn't like, this isn't like week 10. It's like, okay, week 1, this guy went down and Nate Davis came in.
Right.
Which, by the way, Nate Davis was a starter.
Nate Davis came in, though. Last week. Nate Davis.
I know. That's what I'm saying. It's the next week. It's not like it's 10 weeks in between, Robert. It's back-to-back weeks. It's like, oh, he goes down. Nate Davis comes in. He goes down. Now we're bringing in Bill Murray. It would almost be like, let's say that, again, knock on wood, Caleb got hurt. Bajent came in last week. Okay, right? Caleb's back in. Caleb gets hurt. We're going to go with
Reed comes in.
Yeah, we're going with Austin Reed. You're like, what? At what point was Bill Murray even in the rotation outside of preseason or training camp?
You know what? To just call it as it is, Nick, we're already speculating that in the third quarter, the Bears were basically going live practice reps for Caleb Williams in the offense. It is possible The Bears thought the game was in hand enough that they were giving Bill Murray a live NFL tryout, effectively, where they were saying, look, we want somebody to step up. Go get him. Show us something. Prove to us that you deserve this. And I have no idea how well he did. I'll have to go
And
look it up. But
and
it
again,
is, I know we highlighted Murray before the season because for those who don't remember, he's a 27-year-old UDFA. He's a stranger case when it comes to his journey to this place right now. So
yep.
while normally it's not an amazing idea to bet on true no-namers, Murray might find a role for himself. I don't know. Maybe I'm just
For,
hoping for
for,
something.
former D lineman too. And
Hmm.
I mean, I think people why I like Nate Davis, y'all, is I think he has way more potential and ability than Pryor, than
Hmm.
whomever else. That's all I'm chasing. I don't know the off the field, the motivation, the practicing, and
We
if I'm
couldn't
being
know.
quite honest, nobody does. There's a lot of speculation. What's in the press conference? Like that's my job isn't to speculate quotes and people who
Nope.
may not have sources. Like that's not my job. My job is the guys on the field and what I see. So that's all I see. But if it's worse, if he doesn't get along with teammates, then I'm for whomever makes the Bears the best that they can be. I just think that Nate Davis is the best pass protector easily and best zone blocking guard that we have.
Speaking of the best that the Bears can be, there's one thing that the Bears did not particularly work out today that I want to ask you about because I think over the next 5 weeks, this might become, and I'm everybody strap in, this might become
Oh,
the most important question that the Bears offense can answer. Okay? Because Nick, I saw two receivers play for the Bears, both of them playing at different times in the wide receiver 2 role. And I thought one of them looked a lot better than the other. What do you do with Roma Dunze? Because I think he's outperforming his role. I think
yep.
if I could, I would almost find a way to just write Keenan, I don't want to say out of the offense, but I would decrease Keenan's touches to get Rome more. Rome looks good when we get him the football. He looks clean when he's running routes. He's drawing penalties. He's creating separation. Sure, he's looked a little lost throughout the month of September, but especially as we prep for December, he's the guy that I think is going to moss somebody to beat the Packers, right? Like, he's the guy who's going to be one-on-one down the field against Brian Flores cover 0, and Caleb Williams is going to blindly throw up the football, and Rome's going to come down with it. What do you do with this guy? Because you got one guy being paid $23 million. That's not an easy conversation to have.
Mhm.
But what do you do?
I'm not as down on Keenan. So to me, I think Keenan's a better blocker, and it's
Mm-hmm.
people like, that matters.
It does matter.
There's plenty of times that matters. I think Keenan's a better blocker. I also think that Keenan's better in the slot and Rome's more explosive. So I think you can mix and match what you need. But I thought Keenan made a couple of decent good plays today. Um, I I just think that Caleb has less reps with him, right? And I think that's a little rusty right now. He has a lot with Rome. And if you saw in past weeks, a lot of the either run game RPO or the quick game to the single receiver split end was for DJ Moore. And it was forced,
Mm-hmm.
forced, forced, forced. And then it was like 2 yards, incomplete pass. Like it wasn't good. It went to Rome today and it was even better. So you could argue, Robert, that that was wide receiver 1 stuff, not wide receiver 2 stuff. But
It's true.
I think that they're again trying Rome in that role is again trying to find the strengths and weaknesses within these weapons and how to use them best. I mean, we
Right.
saw a screen to commit today that went super well when we saw almost all exclusively to Everett before, or who knows, they would try that for Big Dog for some reason. So I think that they're still mixing and matching, but I still like Keenan Allen. I think
Oh,
that he has
yeah.
a really good role. He could in this team. I want to see him more in these option routes as your slot and a lot less of everyone who can play every position. Like put people in the best spot where they can thrive.
Oh, yeah. I mean, just to be clear, there are folks running with this ridiculous, I think it's ridiculous narrative that Keenan Allen is somehow washed, right? And he's not, especially when he touches the football. Keenan has more wiggle than I've just about ever seen him have. And he's beating defenders, NFL defenders, in the open field regularly. This is stuff that matters. What I'm more commenting on, Nick, is that when they're running a pattern that has Keenan Allen breaking 10 yards down the field, it's taking nearly a full quarter second longer than it would with any other receiver to get to that point. And eventually you need that time back. right?
Did you think the fade to Keenan was on Keenan or on Caleb?
But I honestly think it was just good coverage. If I was Caleb's quarterback coach, and I don't know how they're teaching it, I would have wanted him to just look off of Keenan because I thought Horn had proper leverage. I don't think the ball was super competitive, but I also don't think there was much there. What did you think?
Well, I think that Keenan beat him on the actual fade, and he should have threw the fade instead of the back shoulder.
Ooh,
So I think
ooh.
it's a miscommunication, and actually that shows Keenan did have a step on him because that's how you run that. You run the fade until you can't get the fade, then you throw the back shoulder. Back shoulder is more advantageous, obviously, because the DB can never see it. But to me, I think that's a little bit of a rep thing. So we'll
It,
watch it all 22, but that was my first look on that.
Speaking of, that's interesting because I wonder if that's part of why Caleb has clearly preferred the back shoulder ball. I wonder if Caleb is still working on his feel for whether his guy has beaten somebody deep or not and is throwing the back shoulder because all else fails, back shoulder's open,
Yep.
baby.
Yep.
And so there are receivers, I wonder, that are saying to themselves, Caleb, I beat him. And he's like, I didn't think you did.
Yeah, yeah, and that's again, that's like that's the classic thing of not knowing the speed, not knowing the feel of Keenan
The
running fades.
window.
Um, so I have to give a shout out here. So again, y'all, we did a live before the podcast. If you're just
Hmm.
listening to the podcast, right, there are still people that comment. I do need to give a shout out here, and this is to John, right in the comments, and he says, and we haven't talked about this yet. The most important part of this game was we improved our second round pick, which is also very true. And also for the Panthers fans that somehow hate us now, I think almost exclusively because of the trade, that now we have so much ammunition just to trash talk for a long time.
Well, and I gotta be honest, okay? So you and I have watched the NFL for an awfully long time, right? And we've watched, I hope, football in general, like including college football. There's something in the air, and you can smell certain things happening. Miami gets that extra touchdown late last night, which I watched for some reason. I don't know why I stayed up that late, but I don't know if you saw it, Nick. Miami closes the gap to 6. You knew. You knew they were gonna find a way to get into the end zone again, and they did. They end up winning the game. It's really hard to stop that. I don't know, almost like the story writing itself sometimes, right, Nick? And I got to tell you, quiet little narrative part of this game. If Caleb didn't play well, you can't do the thing where you look back in the offseason and you go, and then Caleb just welcomed in the Panthers and crushed them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Another big one for this would be, I know this is silly, y'all, but Caleb outperforming Trevor Lawrence next week would fit into the 30 for 30. That would be, you'd get the interviews from Kirby Joseph or Kerry
Yep.
Joseph where he goes, yeah, you just knew. You knew all season. It was just a matter of when. Like, these go into the documentary of somebody who becomes a legit star quarterback. And I know that's ridiculous to talk about. If I didn't say ridiculous things, you probably wouldn't listen to the podcast long term. But it's more to say, Nick, like the story of Caleb Williams being the first really good Bears quarterback since Sid Luckman needed this game to go about like it did. And it did. Check mark. Everything right
Mhm.
now is still on track. And add a couple more 300-yard games, and he might just be on track for 4,050 yards.
Yeah,
We'll
yeah,
see.
yeah. Well, it's cruising, which is cool. And I think so. I saw someone post that this is the um second 300-yard game of Caleb, and I don't think Fields had two in
He had
his
one.
career. Yeah, so Caleb's already got two. So I know there's gonna be people that are thinking of all this kind of stuff. Um, One negative I want to talk about: 4 of 11 on third down. I'll call it 4 of 10 though, because one was the kneel downs. I assume that they count that. And then over one on fourth down. Again, that's less than you would like. But then they held Carolina to 3 of 12 on third down and 1 of 3 on fourth down, which I thought was really impressive. So again, just some things that they could maybe get a little bit better on.
Okay, coach, speaking of, talk me through Shelton's big call. We have freaking fire, man. What's he saying?
Well, so fire blitz, and I think that part of that is they uh they had a run call into a blitz that they weren't ready for. And so that's why he's letting them know, hey, we have this. Like we're not ready for this. And then he's like, "Oh yeah, yeah, I know." And then checked to some. So I think it was a check and then checked again. So to me, I think that's what it was. They're bringing a blitz, I think, off of B gap, and the run was going to go there. And Shelton's letting him know this is not going to be good.
Hey, I really, man, I love the collaborative element of this offense. I feel like we haven't seen a quarterback have an argument for it with a center in years. And as silly as that sounds, it all goes into baking a cake that's actually going to taste like anything flavorful around December. I know, Bears fans. I if I was listening to me, I would think that this guy sounds a little nuts. Like he keeps talking about a game that is weeks and weeks and weeks away when this Jaguars game is no pushover. But I'll tell you what, Nick, we just saw this with the Andy Dalton Panthers. I think there's an element to a winless team has to get all that tension out. But once you get it out, you kind of go back to who you are, right? This
Mhm.
Jags team is not good. And so
No.
this is a very winnable game. Not easy because both teams have to travel to London, but if both teams play at their baseline, I tend to think that the Bears have the advantage. So yeah, you've gotta make this a learning year, and a learning year that you also find results in. So this exact kind of day today is a huge part of making that work. I would imagine, Nick, that the Bears finally get to sit in the after game meetings and say, this is exactly who we think we are. This is a reset where the rest of the season gets to be what it's going to be. You're done with September. You went 2-2. Here's the rest of the season. And
Mhm.
from this time to the end of the season, last year, they went 7-6. So if they can do anything similar, we
Right.
might just have a special season. That's my
And
closing thought.
yeah, and my one is this. So as we're talking about, like, as the season as it goes on, this is something that I checked because Washington's 4-1, and everyone's talking about them, and the Bears go to Washington, and that's going to be a big game. But let's fast forward all the way to our season predictions, Robert. Okay, I talk about something called rest all the time,
Mm-hmm.
all the time. Probably almost annoying because there's advantages with it. The Bears go to London, right, and play Jacksonville. Then they have a bye week. Then they play Washington. So Chicago's going to have an advantage in that game. They're going to be healthier. They're going to have 2 years of preparation for them. They're going to be all juiced up watching the read option and all the stuff that they like to do. And so I like our odds more because of that. I know there's some people that are just going to like Jaden because of Jaden, but the rest thing is going to matter. That's going to give them, I think, probably like a 53% chance when before is maybe a 50% chance.
I sure hope so. That Commanders game is looking tougher by the game. I mean, look, we could say whatever we want to about how the Commanders offense may find a little bit of it may get a little muddy against the Bears defense, but that remains to be seen. Right now,
Mhm.
they're managing to run on just about anybody. So
Yeah.
nothing's easy. It's the NFL. You could end up getting Kyler Murray and Trey McBride and Marvin Harrison Jr. running roughshod all over you. Nothing's impossible. But I will say, Nick, next bunch of defenses are not super good. So
Mhm.
if Caleb Williams can deliver like he did today over the next couple weeks, they may just end up in a shootout, and God forbid they may win one. So we'll
Yep.
see. We'll see.
So we don't do this as often, but y'all, he is Robert F. Schmitz on Twitter.
K, not an F.
K. Sorry.
No
Man, I'm
worries.
thinking of Robert F. Kennedy, man.
I
Okay.
thought you
Robert
were.
K. Schmitz on Twitter. I'm at _ Nick Whalen on Twitter. Again, comment for the algorithm if you're on YouTube, like if you're there, subscribe, review on the podcast and stuff. It gets more eyes, and honestly, it just helps us grow our podcast. So
Yeah,
appreciate that.
we really do appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much for listening. Let us know if you enjoyed the show. Nick, it's your turn. No, wait, we do the emoji thing next week, or we do it on the next show.
Yep. Next
So,
show. Yep.
pumpkin emojis for the dub.
Yep. Yep.
And then we'll go from there. Thank y'all so much. Bear down. And thanks for bearing with us. Nick, I don't know if you've been catching the games. It's been pick city all over the NFL.
A lot of them. A lot of them. Yeah. Denver had a pick six. Um, 49ers had a pick six. Tucker Craft had a long touchdown reception.
Nobody else in the NFL could have thrown that ball, right?
dude.
wide open by almost 10 yards, like in a
Dude,
radius.
the floor is good. The floor is good. So I'll give him that. I got a mo, man, before it gets dark here. So
Perfect. Catch you soon.
later, man.
Bears fans, you're stuck with me. And they did it. Hey, I'll tell you this. I gotta head off, or I gotta head back soon. Thank you all for the well wishes. Being sick sucks, but we made it. The other thing I'll say is the Bears. I thought the train looked like it threatened to derail against Indianapolis, but then, or what is it? Yeah. So hang on. Let me collect myself. After Indianapolis, I thought that the Bears threatened to derail, but they needed the last performances that they've gotten over the last 2 weeks, and they delivered them. And the Bears' offense has looked literally as clean as it's been, and it's made all of the common logic about how it is hard to be consistent on offense in the NFL look true. And the Bears are finding a groove, and I don't think they're going to score 36 points every single week. I mean, that would be ridiculous. But the Bears' defense is looking like less of a fad and more of a thing. And I don't know that it's always going to be the Steelers defense. I don't know that the Bears are going to deliver super duper ultra results against every single offense in the country, but it should be enough to set a ceiling on what opposing offenses can do. And hopefully the Bears offense can be able to achieve that. They have another thing going in their there is something that if I talk about it, I'll jinx it. So just come to your own conclusion about another thing that's helping the Bears that seems to be harming a bunch of other teams. If you need an example of what I'm talking about, Carolina in particular is suffering the bug that the Bears are not yet. Hopefully that sticks around and stays the way that it is. But Bears are 32 through September. A lot of teams aren't. And I can't help but look at this. Moo, thanks so much. What's up? Akusa, are they giving up about 36 points? Oh yeah, you're right. I think another thing, I mentioned this with Nick, and I really believe this. I think it goes a long way, longer than I think some people think, that the Jags got the winless monkey off their back this week. If you want something to look forward to for next week, it's that the Jags proved, if you will, that they aren't who people think they are. They against the Colts, and now they have to do it twice. And that's not easy for anybody. For the Bears, if they win this game, it'll be a 3-game win streak. That's not easy either. But but this game that the Bears are looking at should set up pretty well. Just like Kaiser's saying, Carolina got the winless monkey off their back against the Raiders. Then they limp into Chicago and they got annihilated. It's hard for bad teams, Kaiser, to perform. It's easy for them to upset somebody. It's a lot harder for them it's a lot harder for them to do it twice. My thought is obvious, troll, for what it's worth. I envision the Bears going into, hosting Green Bay in a couple weeks with a 6-3 record. I think that's what they've got to do. If they're 7-2 and all they need to do is win 3 out of the last 8, what a great test for Flus. Because if they don't do that, then boy howdy, something went wrong. Right? But at least right now, the Cardinals look beatable. The Patriots don't look particularly scary. Let me think, just talking through it. The Commanders definitely look scary. And then Jacksonville, it's not, let me see. Arothic says, I know it's easy to pencil in a win when any given Sunday is a thing, but God, I could see us being 7-2 after 2 weeks. That's the thing, Erothic. It's like there is no such thing as an easy team in the NFL, I don't think. But at the same time, I think that the Bears are I don't think they're a better team than their record. I think their record speaks for itself, and they're going to go up against a bunch of teams outside of Washington with inferior records. I think that the Bears are about a 3-2 team. I think that the Bears are about a 6-seed team. The big question you guys have to ask yourself, let's be real here. I had a Lions fan. He's a good dude. I can't remember his name. I just recognized his profile picture. But so he tweeted at me talking about how on earth could the Bears even consider the playoffs if they're going to be the last team in the NFC North. Where the Bears are going to have to figure something out is that the Bears have to go probably 3-3 in the division. Maybe you can get away with 2-4. You got to win 2 divisional games. So I'll ask you guys just quickly before we sign off, and then we'll sign off here fairly soon. Who are they beating? When are they beating them? Do you think that they take one off of each team in the division? Or do you think that they just run one of the teams twice? Because I'll tell you what, you could go 0-2 against the Vikings. And if you sweep the Packers somehow, that'd be amazing, wouldn't it? If you manage to split against the Packers and sweep the Lions, you're 3-3 and you survive. And that, like, we'll see. Christopher mentions Lions at home. I agree with that. Can you beat them in Motown? Let's see. For real, if we're looking at we're looking at 1-5 in the division, yeah, I get that. Arothic mentions, I think we beat every team once. I think Minnesota cools off a bit as the year goes on. They're good, but they're not 5-0 good. Well, that's the question, isn't it, Arothic? Because I'll tell you what, Minnesota does have a lot of pieces, specifically Dallas Turner is who comes to my mind, that they could legit get better too. Not all of these teams are going to get better as they go, but the Packers, their receiver core should get better. We're watching Tucker Kraft today, and he looks legit, right? And so he's a second-year tight end. Jaden Reed's a second-year receiver, and he's phenomenal. It sucks because I look as right as I hate talk about that. We love Jaden Reed going into the draft cycle, so to see him go to Green Bay and be the real deal is a darn shame. Let's just put it that way. But so at least when I look at this, and I agree with you, Christopher, you mentioned it feels like the Bears find a win against the Vikings every year. Truly, Christopher, when we get to the division, I guess technically you could say this about any NFL game, but when you get to the division, nobody's going to ask how. They're just going to ask how many, right? That's all it is. And like you mentioned, Moo, it's a scary thing. But I also think that another thing worth mentioning is that at least in the Bears case, hey, we'll see. All right. What came to my mind is that's a long way away. 8 weeks of football, lot can happen. We saw Darnold go down and have to leave the game before coming back into it later. If Darnold can't make it and you're playing Nick Mullins, everybody goes, yeah, they got 2 cheap wins. And I won't care. I won't care at all. But so we'll see what happens. I think that Kevin O'Connell keeping this up forever is going to be hard for him. But I also think, here's another question, okay? Bears fans, get real with me, all right? We're almost there. We're 4 weeks away from something I've talked about. 4 weeks, okay? So let's say the Bears go to London. They win. They're 4-2. They hit their bye week. They have a bye week, okay? Then they go, I think, to Washington, and they lose. They're 4-3, right? And then they go to Arizona. They win. They're 5-3, okay? Does the defensive line of the Chicago Bears remain as is? I want to know that, or I want to know the answer to that question. That is something I think we need to know. Because when we're talking about these divisional games, if the Bears have a spare D tackle to throw at other teams that's ready to roll, and they have some D-line depth so that they can throw guys at the other teams in waves, I think that an already very good defense gets that much better. And that might tilt things. Like against teams like the Lions, against teams like, I'm scared to say the Packers, but the Packers are kind of in that category. I look at a lot of these teams. The Vikings could be in this category where if you can just throw people at the opponent, like you mentioned, Arothic, if Darrell Taylor plays like this and Billings and Dexter keep it up, then yeah, I think we stay the same. I agree, but you need a DT3. And if that DT3 is a good player, so be it. I mean, at past a certain point, you got to get rid of the starter or not starter designation. You just need dogs. And if you can find a guy that can come to the team and play like a dog, then good. I mean, Moo mentions, for instance, that the Bengals just took a horrible L. Like, let's be real, guys. Take a step back. Trey Hendrickson is playing like one of the best players at his position in the NFL. And the Cincinnati Bengals have not extended him. And I don't know that they have plans to, because I would imagine if they had plans to extend him, they would have done so already. Now the team is falling. They're falling hard. They had, I think, as gifted an opportunity as you're going to get. As gifted an opportunity as you're going to get. Um, yes, I want to stay in the call. Zoom. I'm talking. I'm streaming here. But so uh they had for those who didn't see, Lamar Jackson and the offense are driving. And then Lamar sees a snap, hit him in the chest, fall forward, get kicked behind him, and then the Bengals pick it up. Bengals are on like the 30. They don't have to get anything. They can't get any yards. Set up for the field goal. Evan McPherson comes on, and then a crap hold happens. Like a snap, horrible hold, and all of a sudden the Bengals missed. Ravens drive back the other way. Justin Tuck kicks, and the game's over. Ravens win. That is sickening. Like, I'm mad, to be honest with you guys. I was mad about the Bears losing a winnable game against the Colts. That might be worse. That's tough. And their defense is so rough. And I just can't help but wonder if the Bears are offering what could be, if the Bears are offering a second round pick, is that enough? Let alone if the Bears have to offer a Carolina pick. And I'm not trying to tell you that that would be a smart move. I am a fanalist. This is for polls to decide. What I am telling you is that if you had Trey Hendrickson and Montez Sweat on this team, and then you've got Darrell Taylor coming off the bench and DeMarcus Walker playing as edge 3, but also potentially being that third 3 technique, this Bears defensive line, I think, goes from, hey, this is pretty good. We got a lot of guys who can play, to, oh man, these guys are a problem. And I don't really know how we're going to block them, especially if you really want to make an impact, because Trey Hendrickson right now is a hot hand. And so he's somebody that you'd bring in. You'd expect 2 to 3 years of quality play, and you'd just spend, because you'd be taking advantage of the Caleb Williams rookie contract window. It would be pretty rad. We'll see. But I mean, I don't know what's going to happen. I can't know. But there's no Kmart for offensive linemen. But Max Crosby would be sick too, Jeremy. I just don't know if the Raiders can trade him. Who, speaking of, I believe the Raiders just pivoted to Aiden O'Connell, so that'll be something. We'll see what happens there. But so, anyways, is the defensive line going to change? I don't know. If it stays as it is, I think that the Bears could spoil within the division. But right now, today, not projecting any change, not being upbeat, not assuming who the Bears are in December, I think the Bears could go 2-3 in the division if they somehow played 6 games tomorrow, right? But the nice thing is they don't play 6 games tomorrow. They play 1 next week. Then they take a week off. Then they come back. It's going to be a long time before the Bears even have to play the Packers. Does the Matt LaFleur and Jordan Love somehow get figured out? I don't know. I'll tell you what. Jordan Love is finally looking like literally exactly the daggum player that I said he was in that breakdown I did, where I talked about how if Jordan Love didn't develop in his pocket sense, he would end up becoming a turnover problem. And at least from what I'm seeing against the Eagles, against the who did they play last week? Against the Eagles, against Vikings, and here against the Rams, he's turning the ball over a lot. And there are tons of things that he can do. Like, that guy can make a throw and a half, but he's giving the ball away a lot. And Christopher, for what it's worth, I always think that the highest paid quarterback in the league thing is weird, right? Like, let's be honest, okay? Every quarterback that is the latest paid quarterback is going to be the highest paid quarterback in the league. I think that Jordan Love is a clear top 12 quarterback, if not a top 10 quarterback, right? But you got to pay the money eventually. And hey, it helps when you've got ballers at receiver. I really like their receiving core. I think it's fun to watch, et cetera, et cetera. You guys have heard all that before, right? But if their defense, I don't know, man. It's like this game against the Rams feels like it's unnecessarily hard. But they've also got plenty of track left to go. I think the Bears entered halftime 7-6, and then they ended up putting some space between them and Los Angeles, winning by 6 points. So it's not as if it's anything to get crazy braggadocious about. If it takes the Packers a minute to put them away, whatever. Transitive property doesn't really exist in football, anyways. All of this to just talk about top to bottom. It's let's see, the Love contract will not hinder the Packers until he's no longer the highest paid quarterback in the league. Yeah, exactly. Right? Like the Love contract is exactly what they can hand out. It's a unique situation to them based on the way that they construct their cap because they've got enough draft hits across the rest of the roster. But anyways, I think that it's funny. I don't know how you guys are feeling, but if I was going to rank teams based on how unexcited I am to see the Bears face them, right around the highest is the Vikings and the Packers. Packers because of the curse. I'm going to be blunt with you guys. The fact that the Bears have not beaten the Packers in 5 straight years feels like something that while Caleb could change that, I'm just not going to bet on him to do it. The Lions, I'm excited about. These Niners, I'm surprised at how excited I am for them. Then on top of that, the Seahawks feel like a game you gotta hope you could win. But the Vikings are scary. Right now, the Vikings are hitting on all cylinders. These things don't seem to last forever, generally. I've watched a lot of Dallas Cowboys teams and a couple of Eagles teams that looked unbeatable for the first half of the season, and then something cracked, and it didn't work the rest of the way. Who knows if that's going to happen? Don't bet on it, but it'd be a nice break if it did. The best thing I can tell you about these Bears, and I really mean this, y'all. I really mean this. I really try not to be a homer. I don't know how, I'm sure you guys can tell, and especially fans of the channel for a while, but I work really hard to try to be as grounded as possible so that you get as close to the truth as possible. And the nice thing about this Bears team is all the adversity they're dealing with because they were a young team. They were always going to be. And the fact that they had to grow through these issues is a pretty standard NFL story for what can create a good team come the parts of the year that actually matter, December and January. Coming out hot is great, but if you can't sustain it, then it doesn't mean anything, and you get smoked by the Buccaneers, like what the Eagles did last year. This Bears team looks like it is going to find a way to reinvent itself, and then it could come out down the backstretch and win just enough games to go to the playoffs and be dangerous with an offense that evolves week to week as their quarterback grows. And frankly, their potential wide receiver one. Because I got to tell you, I thought Rome was good. I did not think he was this kind of guy good. I really didn't. I mean, I thought he was good, but his feet look way better than I expected. His craftiness as a route runner feels like it's something that Keenan Allen is mentoring him on the day-to-day, and I love that. I will take that. But I can't help but look at this and think to myself that we've got a fun season. We got to enjoy it. But I'll tell you what, John, you said this earlier, and I do want to go back to it. It doesn't matter if it's off the back of 4 pick sixes, does it? If Caleb Williams beats the Packers, good Lord. John, my guy, you've been here for a while. Can you even imagine Bears Twitter, Bears social media, Bears forums, Bears water cooler conversations around office buildings in the area if Caleb Williams and the Chicago Bears host the Packers in week 11 and eke out a victory by hook or by crook? There'll be some Bears fans that no matter what are always going to say, yeah, but they could have beaten them by more. But most Bears fans, like imagine most Bears fans, if Caleb Williams actually manages to, oh my gosh, Akusai, I know. If the Bears roll into that game 6-3, Bears fans are going to be problematic. And I imagine, can I be real? I imagine the Bears will get humbled in that game just because that's what happens with the Packers. You're going to hear me predict it. I'm going to tell you right now, the Packers could lose most of their games. The Bears could win most of their games from here until week 11. And I'm going to pick the Bears for a loss because I decided it like 2 years ago that I'm going to pick the Bears to lose pretty much. No, I decided it week 1 last year. I realize this now. Um, that I'm going to pick the Bears to lose until they just win. That's a prediction I'm completely comfortable being wrong on because right now I am just not going to pick the Bears to beat them. But if I'm remembering correctly, the Bears face the Packers in week 17 in Lambeau. I think they could win that one. Maybe I'm out of my mind. Maybe there's no way. But I can't help but look at that game and I'm like, no, by then, Caleb should have figured out who he is and isn't. And if the guy can stay healthy, and hey, kudos to him so far, he's mostly avoiding. So, where I think, by the way, is it week 18? I thought they faced the Seahawks week 18. Did I get that wrong? But yeah, week 18 in Lambeau. If there's one thing that I would like to see Caleb change, I don't know how to change this, by the way. Caleb is now has like 3 plays this season where somebody has a sack and he slipperies out of it and jumps out of the tackle, literally, and then regains his feet and goes and makes a play. And I worry about his ankles. I'm probably being too much of a parent in this case, and I get it. But it feels like Caleb's waiting until he gets an ankle twisted, and I don't know what the answer is there. Like, what am I trying to tell him to not be as competitive? So, I don't know. Your boy doesn't know, right? But right now, Caleb has done a really good job, I think, of limiting exposure to heavy hits. And I'm a fan of this. I mean, he got dusted up on the sidelines and everybody wanted a flag that, like, hit him in the chest protector. He's good. So, maybe my favorite part so far about Caleb is that Houston game outstanding. He's been generally good at protecting himself. So we can talk about the late end of the season and actually hope that it'll be there. We'll see. But I'm excited. I'm sure you're excited. 3-2. Funny part is, I mean, I think it's funny. Do y'all think it's funny? There is a weird emotion to watching a season that's playing out pretty much like you thought it would, right? This time last year, we were talking about an 0-4 team that we were shocked was 0-4. Shocked. They were 0-4, right? Yes. I keep erasing the KC game, by the way. Fun fact, I guess. They lose to Green Bay. I'll literally never forget that game. They lose to Tampa. I'll also literally never forget that game. They lose to Denver. I'll literally never forget that game. But Kansas City, yeah, that was a beating I expected. And so I guess I just remember it and I'm not going to forget it. Or what is it? That's a game I expected, so I've forgotten it and I moved on. And I keep forgetting. So this time last year, we were talking about a season that had gone way, way against the grain. Like, obvious, you talk about losing to Detroit and Cleveland. Those hadn't happened yet. We thought the Bears this time last year would have been about 3-2. This time this year, the Bears are 3-2. Not only are they 3-2, they pretty much won exactly the games and lost exactly the games we expected them to. Now, I had a couple flipped, if I can be honest. No, actually, I think I had them losing to the Colts. I'm just disappointed because the Colts played worse than I thought they would. Not that it matters, right? Because it's not about Robert predicting. That's not the point, okay? If I ever cite my own predictions, I'm not attempting to, like, brag. I know this may sound, frankly, tinny and, what's the word? This may sound tinny and pretentious, but if I'm ever citing things that I said in the past, it's purely because I do believe that an analyst that does this kind of thing ought to have some record of getting any of the details right. Like, you don't have to get exactly the score. You don't have to get anything. You don't have to. But you can't predict your Bears to go 17-0 and then they lose 14 games. Like, that's the kind of stuff that I think just hollows out the meaning in doing any of it, right? So this time last year, it was a wild season where things were flat out not going the way we thought they were. The defense looked awful. We thought the defense would look okay at an absolute minimum, and they didn't. But this year, the Bears defense has looked as good or better than I think we thought they did. The offense looked a little worse, but it's starting to right itself and it's starting to get back to average. I'm really curious to see how 36 points will affect their per game total because between what they did against the Rams last week and what they did against the Panthers this week and what they may stand to do over the next 4 games, they can put a lot of points on the board because they're going to be playing a bunch of defenses that are not very good. And we're okay with this. So I don't know what's going to happen, but we'll see. It is nice that we're here. Soak it up. You don't get that many Bears victories. At least we haven't in the past. So drink them in when you got them. They may be it. Folks, thank you so much. Love hanging out with you guys. Oh, yeah, 100% Akusai. Anything can happen. Anything can. I have no idea what's going to happen in London, but hopefully the Bears come out ahead. Then they head into a bye week. Folks, bear down. Thanks so much.